Hi, welcome to a special breakout episode of Beyond the Frames. Beyond the Frames is the media and entertainment industry insiders podcast that looks at the art, technology, and business of making entertainment. I'm here at the Media Production Technology Show in London, and I'm really excited to be at the Scan booth because, as you can see, we've got an amazing virtual production stage set up here. And I'm going to be speaking to Ben Bentley from Nightsky Studios. Hi, Ben.
Hiya, how's it going?
Good. How's the show been for you?
It's good. If you can't tell by my voice, it's been a lot of talking about VP over the last couple of days. But yeah, it's been really nice to be here with Scan and Final Pixel and get to show off what we do.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here. Hold on to your voice a little bit longer because I'm going to be asking you to talk us through the setup here. I know we've got a Blackmagic camera here that's hooked up to the virtual set.
Yep.
You've got a couple of monitors up there and something running Unreal Engine, which is all really exciting.
Yep.
But before we get started, tell us a little bit about Nightsky Studios, where you're based and what you focus on.
So we are a virtual production studio. We opened up, as with most studios, during the pandemic. We came from the live events world and realized that VP and screen and this, being used in this instance was going to be what the next frontier was with video wall. So yeah, we are based up in Glasgow. We've got a 32,000 square foot studio space and a fair chunk of video wall. We've kind of decided to be that company that builds screen to spec rather than be a standing wall all the time. So rather than having that big volume, we go, hey, what do you need to make your shoot exist? Let's get that perfect and make it fit your budget and make tech work for the production rather than the production have to work for the tech.
Yeah, and that's fantastic because technology, I always feel, should really serve the creative intention and the storytelling purposes. You know, me being a storyteller who works in animation and live action, I quite naturally am story-driven and character-driven. And the worlds that I tend to build, no two worlds are the same, right? So it's really refreshing to hear that your approach is very much, although you've got fantastic technology, that it's not driven by technology as such, it's driven by the client's need and the storytelling purposes.
It's all about that creative vision. Our job is to merely facilitate the ability for you to take whatever's in your head and make it tangible. If we do that, we're doing our job well.
Right, so you say you've got a studio space on site in Glasgow. Is that, do you use that for prototyping and planning your systems, or is it also a shooting stage?
It's a shooting stage as well. So we've got a couple of stages up there. One of them we use mostly as a build space for traditional shoots, as come in, build their set, stand for 6 months and then remove. But we use it as a research and development space as well. So if we've got somebody that comes to us and goes, hey, we've got this idea, we would like to do this, we'll put something up, prototype it, make sure it'll work for them before they ever spend any money. And it's what we feel is the best way to help people understand this emerging technology and just get to grips with it.
Yeah, and that's a winning combination, having the experience in physical sets and physical production, as well as the virtual production experience that you've clearly developed over the past few years for your company, coming together. That's a really potent mix of expertise. And it's something that there's a misconception quite often with virtual production in that, well, it's all in the computer, so you don't really need anything other than experience with real-time engines and real-time lighting, and virtual production expertise is entirely based on how well you can operate your workstation. But that's not entirely true, right?
Not at all. It's another department that you're adding to the traditional shooting dynamic. We step into the set doesn't step into us. We are essentially helping bridge that gap of the level of control that people can have, but that also means that the tech needs to not be a barrier to shoot. It needs to be something that is just, the crew should never have to do anything different than they normally do. And that's it. That's the whole thing we try and strive for, is to just make it that it's never a thing that should stop you achieving what you want to do.
Right, exactly. So I'd love a tour of what you've got here in the stand. I can see that it's a modular and scalable solution you've got here. So talk us through some of the key elements you've got here.
So I guess we'll start with the biggest thing here, which is our video wall. So we are a Row Ruby 2.3 V3. So what that means is that the pitch between each of the LEDs is 2.3 millimeters. it's it's a reasonably fine pitch product. You can get finer. What we have found is that 2.3 works well for us because of the size that we generally build. Where normally, this is probably quite a small wall for us to throw up. So that smaller pitch is when you want to get closer to it. So again, there's a number of things you can choose. There's a load of products on site here this week, down to, I think there's a sub 1 mil pitch, which means you can really get a camera right in close. But again, picking the right product for the shoot is part of the job of what we do.
But that discipline has been around forever with production. The importance of pre-vising and planning your shots, along with some flexibility so you can improvise on set, is critical. So what are some of the shot sizes that you can expect to get with a screen like this?
So you're probably looking at some more sort of like over-the-shoulder stuff, probably medium shots, not necessarily wide shots, probably not much in the close size just because of its, I think we're a 6 meter by 3 meter, so you've got a bit of lateral play, but not much on the height wise. So it's probably middle body up to sort of top of head sort of shot with this specifically. Again, the physical size of what you have of the actual screen will also dictate what you can and can't do in terms of movements. But part of that, as you say, the previs, we sit and model and map everything so that we know exactly what size of screen we need to build for people. Because this panel, each one of them is a half meter by half meter panel that just clicks together. So we can scale in whatever direction we need to go. We can fly it as a roof if we need lighting details. There's all sorts of things, but that will always be dictated by the shoot, not by what we have.
Right, why build an extra element if it's really not appropriate for the shoot or within the budget?
It just costs more money. If you're not using it, let's try and remove it and make spend that budget on the set builds rather than on screen you're not going to use.
Now, I know that the fidelity of the screen is such that on the monitor, you can't even see, definitely can't see the pixels, but you certainly can't even see the seams of the panels. Even up close, I can barely see it with the naked eye until I get really, really close. In terms of balancing that kind of fidelity to what's going to be captured on camera, what's the relationship between the physical camera choice and that, or is it pretty standardized now?
So the general gist is that you want to stick on the large format sensor sizes. It helps avoid moire and those sort of things. Realistically, you can do it on anything. The screen is kind of agnostic to what you are trying to capture. When we get into the tracking system, you'll see that the camera sort of doesn't actually matter. It's again, it's trying to be too specific with the camera would limit that creative choice of what people want to do. There's a shoot that's just happened with one of our friends on another stage that shot on, I think, 35mm film on an Ariflex camera. So the ability to do literally anything is kind of the joy of it. The actual resolution of the screen, again, sort of is not, it's based on the pixel pitch and how far away you're going to be. The rough, rule of thumb is that for every millimeter of pitch that you have, you want to be a meter back for it to become seamless. So 2.3, we're about two and a half meters back.
That's easy maths. I can get my head around that.
We'd like to try and keep it simple all of the time. But that pitch is generally, you don't want to think about it. So we try and go slightly smaller than what you would actually need for the production.
So then you're covered.
Exactly. It's always that get out of jail. How do we make sure that shoot runs flawlessly?
Fantastic. Now, right now, this looks like a static image, although there's a little bit of foliage moving. The magic really comes in how a physical camera is mapped to the space. So let's take a look at that.
Jump onto the camera. So essentially, standard cinema camera setup, fizz system, everything you'd expect to see. The only difference that we've added is this little guy under here. There's a tiny little star tracker, which these dots that are on the floor are retroreflective markers. So on the monitor on this side, you will see these green dots are essentially the markers telling it where it is in 3D space. That is then being sent out and being fed into Unreal, which is giving it its tracking data. It's nothing more than X, Y, Z positioning. So it's very simple.
So this is optical tracking,
Yep.
optically tracking the dots on the floor.
Yep.
So this could attach to any camera rig.
Yep.
So then why do we need this?
So that's just showing what the final output of the camera is. So this monitor doesn't necessarily have to be here. We put it on the stand so that people can see. But normally it's run by somebody on the brain bar remotely so that we're not having to be like, hey, what's the camera doing, getting in the way of people shooting. The rest of it's more just trying to build up what you'd expect to see on set.
Right.
Should you need to, you can, but we try and avoid it to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah, so this feed is really for you to monitor what's happening with this optically tracking camera.
Yep.
It never really gets recorded onto
you don't see it. What it actually is seeing is irrelevant. The data is recorded further down line in Unreal.
Right, so the data feed from here, not the picture data, but the three-dimensional coordinates, if you were, are captured in real time on the engine?
Yes, exactly. There are some systems you can do it with, some you can't. It's very specific on what tracking system you've got, but MOSIS does allow it to happen, which allows you to take that. Should you have to do some post effects, you can take those camera solves into post and have that answer before you ever have to spend any time on it. So it just helps speed up that post process.
So does that mean you need to have a digital twin, essentially, of the camera in your engine, so that when you're pulling focus and you're getting your aperture and all of that, it is a one-to-one relationship with that.
So
it's not just positional data, but it's the camera data.
So there is lens tracking, there is generally focus and zoom is what we're looking for, which will adjust what is that inner frustum that's being shown, which is what the actual field of view that the camera sees.
Break down the frustum a little bit for our viewers, because our viewers range from very experienced to first timers in this stuff. So there's the bigger frame of the scene. It's a real-time feed from Unreal Engine. But then there's a rectangle within it, which is what you're referring to for the camera. So what's happening there?
So what this inner one is showing is what the camera would see if you were on location, is the easiest way to describe it. It deals with parallax and perspective shifts, because that's what we're essentially trying to do, is make it that as you move, if you think of it from the sense of looking through a doorway, as you move from side to side, you see slightly more of the inner and outer of the door as you move across. In traditional 2D plates, you don't get that. And that's the bit that sells the illusion, if you will, is that ability to move.
And while it might look strange from the outside to see a rectangle within a rectangle, and the image doesn't quite match up, the point is whatever's in the rectangle is all you're going to see within the camera.
So you can see on our monitors over by, that's all the camera sees. It doesn't care about the outer parts. The benefit of that is that when it comes to hardware processing, we can leverage one GPU to do the inner and one GPU to do the outer. So we're also trying to create efficiencies, because it runs hard, I think would be the right way to put it. I think we've got an Ada A6000 doing the processing. I think it's running about 94% to do this screen, and it's not particularly big in the terms of VP environments. So you can see we run out of processing quite quick.
And again, going back to the principles of visual storytelling for film, all that matters is what's within the frame. Even on a physical set, just outside the frame, there's sandbags and people and light stands and all kinds of chaos. So it's the same principle, really. Just outside of the frame, it'll be all manner of nonsense. But what happens here?
You can even see that if I tilt this up, the sand is not finished further across. So you can see all these problems. But again, where the camera position sits, you don't see it.
Rendering priority is placed within the frustum, as you said.
Correct. So I guess the only other part of that is that you can turn the outer frustum off. We are using it for lighting data, as what if we had a set, it gives a different kind of light than an actual lamp that you might have, like an aperture or a sky panel. But that gives reflections. So if you have shiny materials, it's where the Mandalorian had such a big volume, was because he was a walking mirror. He needed to have that reflections everywhere. So that's what the outer part does, is it gives that little bit of, it's not fine enough that you would be able to use it as like shooting onto it, but it's enough that you go, okay, I understand it, and your brain makes that connection of it's a real world. Exactly. So I guess the final part is have a look at this this rendering world. So we're quite simple in this, and essentially we have got in this lovely rack of ours, we've got two rendering machines. We have a master editor, which is what everything's being run on, and then rendering nodes. We essentially don't make one machine run everything. It's all running in a multi-user setup, which means when you change one thing on here, it adjusts on the wall. You can have people remote in from other countries, other worlds, and all work collaboratively on this.
So you can distribute the workload as well. One person can focus on, say, updating the set, another person on the lighting,
exactly,
and animation, and so on.
You then also have one person who is only worrying about the way that this is pushing to the wall. So suddenly that's where the brain bar is the terminology that's been called, but essentially the control center for the virtual production team has now appeared on set. You have somebody that's looking after the tracking system to make sure it knows where it is at all time. You've got somebody looking after what's called end display, which is what renders to the wall. Somebody looking after the camera feeds. It's just another department that fit in, but they all work together really well, hopefully, if everything goes well, that you should never know they're there.
Right.
Which is always fun.
Thanks for that. That was a fascinating overview of what's been happening at the stand here. I have to say, I've been around MPTS over the last couple of days, and by far, this is the coolest stand.
Thanks.
It's definitely the most impressive as you walk past, but as soon as you start playing around with the kit, it's really evident that this is a new plateau for virtual production systems. Not just that you've got cutting-edge software and hardware play, but how scalable and how adaptable your system is. So thank you very much for that tour. It's been great.
Thank you for having us.
Cheers. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you like what you saw here, hit like and subscribe, and stay tuned to this channel for even more production coverage from MPTS.